Greetings to you and love, and welcome to the Marriage Foundation YouTube channel, where people come to get the truth about marriage. You know, I used to be a divorce mediator, and I believed in divorce at that time. That was way back at the turn of the century. And when a couple asked me to help them save their marriage instead of taking it apart and distributing the children and distributing the things that they accumulated over the years, I thought, let me give this a try, and I did a deep dive into marriage. Now, at that time, I had a tremendous amount of respect for those who sent me my business, the marriage therapists. But when I asked them how should I help my couple, they were very enthusiastic. They thought that I would do well. And they said, just sit down, listen, hear what they have to say, and see if you can't help them negotiate something that works for them. And I thought about that, and it sounded like a good idea. And then I started thinking a little bit more. At that time, I was divorced. I got divorced in '96, and I had gone through a horrible divorce. And it wasn't because my wife was evil or I was evil. It's because divorce world, it's an industry, and it's set up for one purpose: to take your money. It's a very ruthless apparatus. And so that's why I became a divorce mediator, actually. I wanted to help people avoid that, avoid the courts, avoid the lawyers, avoid, the psychologists who pray. And not all psychologists, but there's psychologists who report to the courts, and they prey on these victims. They exaggerate things for their side, etc. And I think to a large degree, these are the people who have set the tone for how marriage is viewed. And I wanted to see if I could really help my couple not just get through their problems. They had already gone through marriage counseling. I wanted to really help them have a great marriage. And so I started by asking a question. This is a good question. Let's see how you do with this question. I asked, why do we get married in the first place? Isn't that something? Who has ever asked that question before? Always we're asking the question, why did I marry this person? And we could point to the fact that we fell in love with them. No, we never know them well enough. You really don't know someone until you are married to them and you see all their flaws coming to the surface. But we get married because we fall in love. But why do we get married, not just to this person, but why get married at all? And so I thought about it for a while, and literally I asked everyone I knew, people I didn't know, standing in line at Starbucks, and I never was quite comfortable with the answers that people were giving me. They weren't universal. Answers were like, well, I don't want to die alone, to I want to have kids, to, I just think it's better, it's more fitting in society. Those are all good answers. But then I came up with the ultimate answer. And the ultimate answer is really going to embarrass you that you didn't think of it yourself. And I would bet you didn't. And the answer is, you want to be happy, right? And you know that you found your soulmate, and they're going to make you happy, which isn't quite true. But instinctively, we know that being with our soulmate sets the stage for a happiness that we can't have anywhere else. And this is really an important distinguishing response for this topic. This topic is, why does my husband make me feel like I am not good enough? Because when I got into this question, I'll be truthful. I invented a science around marriage. I didn't invent it, I discovered it. I discovered the science of marriage, and it includes the science of ourselves, and it turns out it has nothing to do with what I don't think is a science in Western psychology. So all these good psychologists who are trying to help people, they're good people, by the way, for the most part. I've met some not so good ones who were, shall I say, jaded. But for the most part, people become psychologists because they want to help other people. They started out with an interest because they had questions, and they turned to the science of psychology, but it's not really a science when you dive deep. And then they wanted to help married couples. They thought, okay, they would be good at that. And they're not. And it's not because they don't mean well. It's not because they don't study and study. It's because it's not out there. Now, I began the Marriage Foundation with a fellow divorce mediator who used to be a Navy SEAL. I guess that's not relevant. But he saw what I was doing, and he said, Paul, this stuff has to get out there. And so he handed me a $1,000 check, and he said, let's go to a lawyer, even though he was a lawyer. Let's go to a lawyer, and let's get this foundation set up. And that's what we did. And so this question could be answered by a Western psychologist, and it won't help you heal your marriage, the answer that they give you. They will label your husband. They will talk to you about defending yourself. And all of that is useless when it comes to healing your marriage. The truth is, what you really want is the experience that you got married for in the first place. You want to be happy. And there's a second part to that. Then I started asking the question, well, what makes a person happy universally? Some people aren't interested like I am in cars. So getting a really cool car won't do it for them. You see, we're very subjective. But there's a universal answer, isn't there? Love. That one you probably guessed. Love makes everyone happy. Not being loved, which is a whole topic unto itself, but experiencing love. So these answers made me dive deep into realizing that there is me in the marriage, my spouse in the marriage. In your case, me is I am the wife, and then there's my husband, and then there's the marriage. And I have a question for you. And this is kind of a challenge, but it's not to make you feel like you're missing something, but we all are because we weren't taught. The question is, how can anyone possibly, truly make us feel a certain way? Now, if we're getting beaten up by them physically, we're going to feel those physical effects. But psychologically, and this is what I discovered, this is the truth. And you could think about it and you'll come to the same conclusion that I came to. And that is because we have free will, we can feel any way we want, not any way according to our psychology, because that's what's happening to you now. Your current psychology, your current way of thinking, has you reacting to your husband in a way that is making you feel not good enough. He's not saying to you, you're not good enough. You're feeling not good enough. And here's where we really separate from Western psychology. I'm telling you that spiritually speaking and Psychologically speaking, not Western psychology, you are in charge of how you feel. There's extreme examples of when someone can separate you from that power, but that's not what's going on now. What's going on now is that you have bought into this idea that someone can make you feel a certain way. It is just inaccurate. It's not bad that you think that way, it's merely inaccurate. And it's the result of us hearing over and over again in the world how others can make us feel a certain way. Now, I had this realization that that's not possible in the 90s, before I got into helping people with their marriages. I took my children, my two boys actually, to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. Now, I did this because I wanted them to know their heritage a little bit. My father was in concentration camp. He was in Mauthausen. And he wouldn't even talk about it. They made him feel, right? So Spielberg, we've all heard of Spielberg, the great director, put together this, I think it was a 5-hour loop tape of videos of people talking about their experiences in the concentration camps. And I happened to sit down at one particular section, and it changed my life. Because there was a man talking about, he was in concentration camp, and he was talking about his friend, also in concentration camp, and his friend was praying, and he had kind of a glow about him. He was feeling happiness while he was praying. And this man who was sharing his experience for the camera said, I said to my friend, how can you be grateful? How can you be grateful to a God who has put you in here, taken everything from you? You're gonna die. You're skin and bones. You lost your family, you lost your wealth, you lost everything. How could you be grateful to a God who did this to you? Good question, right? And he said, my friend answered, I am grateful that he didn't make me the way he made those who put us in here. I almost fell off the chair. Here he was, in a much worse situation than you are with your husband, but he refused to feel the effects that others were imposing upon him. What instrument of power did he have? And the answer is very cool. Free will. This is a gift that each one of us has received from God, and when we use it correctly, and we're never taught how in our lives, we never even hear about free will in this context. We hear about free will when we demand to not have to wait at motor vehicle department, or to choose vanilla over pistachio ice cream. But our free will is unbelievable. It's limitless. And so when you are not utilizing your free will, because we have to pick it up. It's a tool. But if we don't pick it up, it doesn't do any good for us. So when your husband is saying whatever he's saying, or doing whatever he's doing, you still are an individual with free will. And you can say to yourself, hold it. He is being him, and he is being him based on all of the experiences of his life, all of the proper or improper use of his wisdom, and he's behaving that way, and that's his problem. But when I respond to it as a victim, then it is my problem. Now let's not stop here. This is a microcosmic scene within the greater context of your macrocosmic life in your marriage. You have the free will to define that which you are imposed upon by, made happy by, or you're neutral to all of that. And instead, you choose to love your husband, to nurture and cultivate that love for him, to feel the happiness that is within you and let it percolate up into your consciousness and into your marriage. You see, the power that we are not taught that we have is the reason that we are not living a joy-filled marriage. Remember, why do we all get married? Not just some of us. We all get married for happiness. Where does happiness come from? Does it come from outer circumstances, and therefore we are like ping pong balls? Good experience, bad experience, back and forth? Or do we maintain a joy-filled existence regardless of our outer conditions, like that hero in concentration camp who chooses to be grateful to God for not making him the way he made those who put him in there? Free will. Why does your husband make you feel that way? He doesn't. You are literally choosing to feel that way. You've read too many magazine articles, you've watched too many pop psychologists on TV, you have bought into this victim mentality because it's all around us, surrounding us, imposing upon us, convincing us with all this quote-unquote logical and highly educated opinions that are not true. You, as an individual, have absolute free will. So now what do? The first thing you do is you recognize that this is true. That this is true. And if you don't think it is, tell me how I'm missing this. We've been doing this for over 20 years. We've been saving marriages. We've been converting marriages from the burden that they are when you don't know about marriages into these glorious life experiences of love and joy. And not just love and joy, but ever expanding life and joy. Because we teach people not just what to do now, to dig out of the hole that they've gotten themselves into, but how to make every single day better than yesterday. And it takes over your life. You start living, not just in your marriage, but in your whole life, with this newfound consciousness. Newfound, but it's always been there. Why has it always been there? Because you are created in God's image. This is not a religious discussion, but you're a soul. And the nature of the soul itself is what? Ever new joy, ever expanding love, intuitive wisdom. It's where it's at. And you lift yourself and you lift your marriage and you will lift your husband out of the mundane nonsense of day-to-day life into this, wow. When people see the people who have taken our course for women, they see happiness. they get stopped. They get asked, why are you so happy? Because they know how to live their marriage. I didn't create this. I discovered it. There's a big difference. If you create something, it's going to be flawed with what you have learned and how you do things. But if you discover something, like you discover the law of momentum, you discover the law of gravity, you discover the law of cause and effect, which all of these come into play in your marriage. They're accurate. They work. Never fails. When does gravity fail? We could work with gravity, we could work with the physics of the world, and that's in the material world, but the physics of your marriage is a spiritual experience. Love is not material. Love is spiritual. You feel it here, not up here. You feel love. It overwhelms you with happiness. What happens when you go to a wedding? There's this period of time when you feel this experience of the presence of love. And what happens? Your mind wants to jump in. Your mind wants to say, wait a minute. Why is my husband making me feel this way? But if you ignore that and you go to the love, it flows and it engulfs him too. And he starts feeling it too. And this is what it's all about. And this is why I want you to like our video, subscribe if you wish, leave a comment if you wish, and visit us again. I'm Paul Friedman. I founded the Marriage Foundation. Thank you for stopping by. God bless you. I hope this helped you. And take care.